Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specializes in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Caught is dead.
This is the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine master guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-host Joe Cruzy as they unlock the secrets to big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights into the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood, sitting here with my two cohorts, Joe Cruzy and Rick Labby.
Hello.
And this week we're talking to Dan Infalt from Wisconsin. What's your town out there, Dan? And welcome.
I'm in a little town called Rome.
Rome, Wisconsin. Is that northern, southern?
Southeastern.
Southeast, okay. Yeah. Down the farm country.
Yep.
Yeah. Where they make the cheese.
Yep.
I got a gravel pit in Rome, Maine.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter's built a new house over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny.
Ruined your wife's deer hunting spot.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk a little deer hunting, I think, Dan. What do you think about that? You like to talk about deer hunting?
Yeah, that's my favorite subject.
Yeah. Ours too.
Yeah.
So I actually it was kind of funny. I just read one of your things you'd posted there about kind of like a little story thing about hunting and being in the woods and stuff, but about how you had to start kind of on your own because your father didn't hunt much. It was kind of a similar story to mine. My father, he wasn't a big deer hunter, but he went, and he was a truck driver, so he didn't really have a lot of time off. Had 5 kids, and so we worked all the time, usually 2 jobs. So he might get to go on a couple of days through the season or a few days, but he just putted around in the woods, and every few years he might shoot a deer, but that's not, I didn't learn a lot about deer hunting from him other than I was thankful that he at least took me and would set me on a stump and stuff when I got old enough to go.
Right, he got you started.
He got me started. He got me interested in it. So you had kind of a similar story, it sounded like.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of really good hunters have started out without much fermenters. I think there's, something about learning on your own that sets you in the right direction sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that's true too, because a lot of times when you're young, especially, you believe what you're told. You know what I mean? If there's a bunch of older hunters around and they tell you something, which we take it or we would take it, or the young people do for a fact. But, you know, I call a lot of the stuff you hear when you get older and you're like, I call them old grandpa tales. You know what I mean? It's the stuff that gets passed on over the years that, you know,
Right.
there's no way in hell it was true, but they keep passing it along, you know.
You think about some of those old tactics, like the old guys used to tell us, you know, you just find a spot and you sit there long enough and a deer will come by, you know, and it would be like these guys would just sit there all day long and eventually get a deer. And there really wasn't a lot of tactic into it. It was like stay away from the bedding areas and just go find a spot.
Yeah.
Find some place you could see good, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if they did ever kill a deer in that spot, they'd hunt there for 20 more years.
right.
Yeah.
No, that I read that same post that you put. It was really good. Just a really good description of kind of what you're about and where you came from and what made you a good hunter. So I think a short post like that people can learn a lot from.
Yeah, it sounded very familiar with how I grew up and lived my whole life and learned how to hunt. So I think you and I are a lot alike. Except
Yeah.
I might be a little older.
Yeah. How old are you, Dan?
I'm 57.
Oh, you ain't much
No,
older.
it's close, yeah.
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 Rick just got into the 60-year-old club.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I don't feel it.
No.
I'm gonna stop doing the birthday thing if I get close to that.
It's a good idea.
That's all I tell the rest of them is wait till you get my age.
Stop keeping track.
All the young bucks here.
Yeah. It's all in our brain anyway, how we feel, how old we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your hunting tactics and stuff out there. So you live in the farm country, but you go up north probably too and hunt the big woods up there in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate in Wisconsin that I got like pretty much all the terrains here. We got some extremely steep hilly stuff in western Wisconsin. We got farmland in central Wisconsin. And where I'm at, we've got a lot of huge swamps and marshes. And then we got the big woods not too far north of me, you know. So we pretty much got everything here, and I've hunted it all. Where I live is mostly farm country and swamps and marshes, which I do really well in the marshes and swamps because we have a very large population of hunters. And as soon as you add 6 inches of water, you lose just about everybody, you know. So most of my hunting is in the marsh and swamp areas, but I do hunt in the hill country in western Wisconsin. I travel up to the north country and a little bit of farmland, but not a lot because I never really seek out permission much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that swamps you're talking about? Is that what they call tag alder swamps or something? Is that what they call a lot of alders?
We have that. We have tag alder swamps and we have tamarack swamps. And the marshes are more cattailish, you know, a lot of vast cattails with islands and timber on the edges.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I hunted Wisconsin one year, probably 12 years ago, and I didn't kill a buck when I was out there. My wife killed a really nice, about 160-inch 10-pointer. Nancy did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah. I couldn't tell you exactly where we were. I went with a buddy of mine that booked the trip where we went, and it was more that kind of rolly, a little bit of farm country, more hilly, rolly terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're blessed that we got some really good genetics and we got a large number of deer. You know, so, I mean,
Yeah.
you can get 2-year-olds that are pretty big here. I mean, I shot a buck that was obviously a 2-year-old by weight and stuff, and it was tooth aged, and it scored 140 as an 8-pointer.
Oh,
Wow.
So you can get some really big bucks at young ages. Where we the downfall is you got a high population of hunters. There's a lot of hunters here, but there are some good bucks if you work for them.
Yeah.
So do you find you're hunting, from what I read, you hunt all public land?
Yeah, pretty much. I had a 70-acre farm I shared with a friend, but he passed away a couple of years ago, and the farm went with him. But I didn't hunt there very often. I hunted there a few times a year. And we kind of, what we kind of did with our when we had that is me and him would only go in there when things were perfect, and otherwise we'd hunt the public, and that way his land would stay good and we'd still have good stuff on the public too. And his land wasn't much better than the public. The only thing was you had kind of a guarantee that nobody else got in there and messed it up on you, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So that, with the up here where we are, it's all private land, but open to the public. And, Maine in general, aside from parts of central and far southern Maine, are pretty friendly to everyone hunting. Is it similar out there in Wisconsin? I mean, is it or is it all private land pretty much posted, and anyone that's not hunting private land is all kind of squashed into the public land?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to gain permission in Wisconsin. It's all locked up private. There is some what they call MFL land where it's a managed forest crop where they get a tax break to let you on it. But for instance, my county doesn't have one single property that's like that in my whole county. But you get into western Wisconsin, you start to find some of it. But there is a lot of public, but that public does get crowded, and you still got to get around people and stuff. And a lot of the public is smaller properties, but a lot of smaller properties. Where you're probably used to hunting bigger stuff in Maine, I would assume.
Yeah, big tracks here. Yeah.
So when you're looking at a piece of public land that you want to go in and start hunting, are you basically looking for the bigger pieces of public that might have what you were talking about with the thick swamps and everything, so that you can just get away, or what sort of things are you looking for?
Not necessarily. I kind of look at it like this. There's not going to be a buck of the size class that I want to hunt on every property. So I kind of look around for properties that number one can hold a big buck, and number two that have one currently. So during the season I'm going to be looking for sign of a big buck, or I'm going to know about one I seen during the summer or something like that. And a lot of time that's on small properties. A lot of time it's on big properties. I shot a really good buck for Wisconsin this year, a 170. That was on a small piece. That was really overcrowded, but it had good neighbors. The neighbors were all managing for big bucks, and they'd come on and off, but you still had to deal with pressure. Sometimes it's really big properties, sometimes it's small. I think the main ingredient I'm looking for is I'm usually looking for stuff in this area of the state, not necessarily the whole state of Wisconsin, but in this area because of my high population. I'm right in the middle of, I'm in farm country, but I'm really close to cities and towns, and it gets a lot of pressure. So I'm looking for usually, when I look at a property, I'm looking for it to be thick, nasty, and wet, like a lot of cattails, tag alders, tamaracks. Driving deer is legal here with guns, and people go and line up in lines, and they'll push every piece of dry land around, and bucks just can't get the age on properties where they can do that effectively. So I look for properties where they can't effectively kill all the deer, where they can grow to an age, and then I specifically look for a deer there to hunt.
And then are you mostly like stand hunting then? If you're in those smaller properties, sounds like you'd have to be.
There's some properties where tracking works, but I'm not into it as much as you guys. I kind of like the chess match, if you will, of figuring out the bedding areas and stuff. I have done some tracking. I think I've only killed one decent buck tracking, and it was a long time ago. But one thing I do that's similar to what you guys do is with a gun, I will sneak into bedding areas, on a crosswind, and try to get close and jump them and shoot them. And then I can cover a lot of bedding areas in one day because we have a pretty short gun season. But my main thing is bow hunting and hunting the bedding areas, basically. I kind of go in these properties and figure out where they're bedding at this time of the year, and then look from the beds out. I kind of do some detective work there and try to figure out exactly when they're bedding there, why they're bedding there, what would put them there, and then how they exit that bedding area. And then I have setups on that exit, and then I just stayed completely out of there until I think that deer is going to be there, and then I go in and set up in those spots.
It sounds like you're patient.
Yeah. You get good at it after a while. I've been doing it my whole life. So you start to figure out And it takes time. I mean, I'm still learning. But one thing that was really big for me was figuring out that these bedding areas, when you find a good one, it'll look like deer bed there all the time. But you find out that those big bucks really have like peak areas of time when they use certain spots. Like they might be there for 2 weeks out of the year is probably about average. And you got to figure out when that 2 weeks is. A couple of years ago, I got a really big target buck that I was after in the marsh. And I went out and I searched the marsh. I knew this buck was there. I was hunting him for like 3 or 4 years, but he's living in like vast cattails, and it was really hard. You can't shoot him from the ground because you got cattails in the way. You can't shoot him from a tree because there's like 3 trees, and I've hunted them all, and he's got me figured out. So I went in there in winter, and I really tried figuring him out even more. And I came up to something I really didn't notice before. What it was a little tiny island of land that was only like a foot elevated out of the water. And it had some willow brush on it. And that willow brush, being familiar with it around here, because it grows pretty heavy on the edges of the marshes, it loses its leaves around here in very early October. And I noticed that it was just filled with beds, and all those beds had rubs on it. And it was right in his area. And there's good sign of a big buck living there. And when you followed the trail out of it through the cattails, it went down into some deep water and then came out into this point that went up into some private land. And that point had a little tiny tree I could get in, where I could hunt, where they popped out from there, that was 75 yards from those beds. And just by doing the detective work of looking at those beds and saying, there ain't no buck bedding here when that sun's blaring right down on them when the leaves are gone. This has got to be early season. Looking at the rubs and how fresh they were versus other rubs, you could tell that they were, yellowing, almost turning white, where that willow brush has an orange tint to it. So I knew that the bucks had to be bedding there in like September-ish, right when they come out of velvet. And so my plan was to hit that right away, first thing in the year, So the next year, during the summer, I had to make a trail around to get to this, because you had to go through deep water and come fairly close in order not to trespass to the private land. So I made a trail in the cattails in July to get to the back side of this and come through. And then when season came, I waited for the very first strong north wind, because I had to make a little noise. So I wanted a wind so that they wouldn't hear me. And that was like about 5 days into the season. And I went in there and I set up. And about 45 minutes after I set up, maybe a half an hour, a doe gets up only like 15 or 20 yards from me. And then another one pops up in front of me. And because of the wind noise, they never heard me come in there, but they're bedded right on that point. And they started feeding. And then I hear something, as the sun's starting to set, coming from that willow brush. I can't see it because the cattails are like 8 feet tall, but you hear the sloshing and you see the cattails moving, coming closer. And then the doe, one was a fawn, one was a doe, but the doe kept coming closer and closer and closer, and it ended up getting right underneath me in his trios, and was only as big around as my leg, so I'm only about 10 feet off the ground. And it gets underneath me and then looks up and sees me and just freaks and starts blowing and runs in between me and what I'm perceiving to be the buck, and starts just blowing and blowing and blowing. And then the buck leaves. And, so I get down and I leave. And just to keep it honest, I came back and gave it one more shot, and nothing showed up, which is what I would expect. But then I did something that most people wouldn't do, is I stayed the hell out of there, because I found that if you hunt these spots that close to bedding repeatedly, those deer figure you out, and they will not come back near there. Not something that's 6-7 years old, So I waited till the entire next year. And then the very first, and I never went near there for anything else until the very next year, right when the season started, the very first brisk north wind we had, I did the same thing, went to that tree, set up, and this time no does got up, but something got out of that willow brush, same timing, came in. When it stepped out, it was the target buck, and I shot him. And it wasn't just because I found those beds. My point to the whole story, which I kind of made a little long, but was that you got to do the detective work and figure out exactly when they're there. If I would have went in October or November, I wouldn't have seen them. And I hear a common theme with hunters that, they save their best spots for November, like when rut is. Well, that's fine if it's a rut spot, but those deer move at all different times in all different spots, and you can hunt them all over the place. And literally, the overall majority of my biggest deer, when you start getting into the older age classes of like 5 and older, the overall majority of those have come from early season, not from rut. I see more deer in rut, but I see the bigger ones, right when the season opens.
Yeah, early there, they don't really have anything to do. They just lay around and get fat and happy till the rut starts. So they're probably easier to figure out.
Yeah, less pressure, and they're a little bit still on that summer routine because we open in early September.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that 170 you shot this year, that was with your bow?
That was with a bow. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's a difference I've always told people about out here is the deer don't have bedding areas here per se in the big woods. You know what I mean? They have areas they frequent or whatever, but they don't have to lay down in the same secluded spot. They'll just, especially like the does, they'll be feeding along some ridge somewhere, and they might work their way down the ridge, and when they get done feeding, they just lay down usually right where they're at. Then they'll get up and feed down further, and they kind of make circles out of that, or they might go down off one ridge, cross the stream, go up on the next ridge, but they wander more. They don't have any particular place to come and go from, and that's mainly because the feed is pretty much the same everywhere. They don't have to go to a certain place to get food. And
there's no human activity really in the summer.
There's no activity anyway
till
here.
Hunting season comes.
Yeah. But then even in hunting season, there's some areas here that, kind of, I guess you'd call the popular spots that there'll be a few more hunters at, but we're fortunate that when you get in the woods, you're not going to see hunters in the woods per se, They're out kicking around the edges, or you see trucks along the roads or something, but there's enough territory here to keep people split up pretty good. But the difference I do notice here is the bucks tend to have, places they like to be, or a place they spend most of the summer and early fall. The feed's good, they like it there, security, whatever it is, but as soon as the leaves fall off the trees, they're out of there. They get into kind of their fall areas where they're going to be for the fall, and maybe whether it's going up on some mountain or some ridge or whatever it is, they do move when the leaves drop off and the woods open up more. They might live in a clear cut all summer, where it's, the regrowth is only 4 or 5 feet tall, but that hides a deer when they're all got leaves on them. But when that goes off, it's wide open again when the leaves fall, and then they don't like it. It's just more or less that they seek the security. I guess that's what I'd say. They're not patterned by humans. A deer out here are more patterned by getting bothered by the coyotes or chased or whatever.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I got from the way you hunt and what you're doing is you turned a negative into a positive. You're using the woods being busy and having a lot of hunters out there to your advantage, and I don't think a lot of people do that. They all look at it as a negative and complain.
I've used the tactics in big woods too, and had success doing it, and figuring out bedding areas and stuff. They are a little more random. And they do spread out, and you might be there the day he's so many miles away, but they do seem to keep bedding in the same places. But you're absolutely right that it is a lot easier when you have a lot more pressure. I would say the more pressure I have, the easier my hunting is. However, you still got to have a mature buck. So you know what I mean? If there's a lot of guys there, they might kill all the bucks. You don't have one. Yeah. But you can also get to the point where you got a big buck in an area that's got a lot of pressure. They're easier to hunt because it's real easy to figure out what people are doing and what the buck's going to do in response, or where he's going to be.
So what are you doing for your scouting, Dan? Do you use cameras, or is it just all on the ground stuff, figuring out sign and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I put some cameras out, but not many. don't want to get it caught up into that whole chase thing. When I use a camera, I don't use it like other people. Most of the guys around here, the new thing is, and I don't really care for it too much, but a lot of these young people, they think the more cameras you got, the better the hunter you are, because you can put, they'll get the cell cams, and they'll get 25, 30 of them, and they'll pay for plans for all of those, and they'll throw them all over, and each one of those spots is a hunting spot, and they sit home watching their phone, waiting for a buck to show up. Well, I'm noticing that these bucks are real in tune to the human scent, and you get scent in there, anytime during the season, and they seem to figure that out and if they do come in there in daylight, they come in a way to check to see if anybody's there. Where I do the scouting in the springtime and stuff, figure the bedding areas out, and if I use a camera, it's to tell me that there's a deer in the area that I want to hunt. There's not a lot of trophy bucks because of the pressure, so I got to find a buck. But my scouting will kill them. My, knowing the bedding areas, knowing the travel routes, knowing where they feed, my woodsmanship will kill the deer. I don't need the camera to do that. The camera just needs to tell me that there's something there that I want to hunt. So I'll either get eyes on a deer, I'll see sign that I know something's really big there, or I'll have, several years of hunting the same deer. But for some reason I'll be targeting an animal there, but the camera doesn't target it for me. This year I only had one camera out all season.
Yeah, I think a lot of the new guys, they're using the camera. They think the camera might take the place of the scouting. They think they're using the camera for scouting, but I don't really think that's the answer. They can.
I agree.
And quite often, you can put a camera on a, like here. I put them out once in a while. I put a couple of them out. More for fun, just to kind of see what's around, but I don't use them to determine hunting or anything. But, I think sometimes the cameras make you make the wrong decisions. You know what I mean? You think you got it figured out, and you think you're making the right decision, but you may be making the wrong decision because it's only telling you that the buck was there at a certain time. It doesn't tell you when he's going to be there again.
Right, and a lot of times, they'll go around those cameras once they figure out they're there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that's really helped me with the cameras is not for the hunting of that season, but to figure an area out. Like if you put a camera on an exit of a bedding area, you'll start to figure out real quick that, like, on that particular bedding area, the mature bucks tend to just come out of there, when there's a certain wind or at a certain time frame. You can start to put together, this is when they're there. For example, I got one finger that goes out into a marsh, and that finger is lowland, but it comes up into a ridge, and on that ridge is some oak trees. And on the acorn years, though, in early season when the acorns were dropping, they would eat the acorns up before October up here in that area. So you'd see rubs around those oak trees, and I hunted that for years, always assuming that the deer were there in early season to eat the acorns, and I was right, except we dropped the camera in there and found out that there's also a huge movement there during rut, because does would bed there year-round. And that camera told me that you also need to be there at this timing, so that helps, but I didn't need that camera to hunt the spot. But once I figured that out, it gave me a new time frame. Now I don't need to put the camera there, period, because now I know that.
Yeah.
So, you can learn from those cameras, but they don't need to be the hunting tactic. You know what I'm saying?
Pine State Armory in Skowhegan is your ultimate destination for hunting and outdoor gear. Located at 338 Madison Avenue, we're more than just a store. We're family. Nick and Jess and their friendly dogs, Bailey and Ruby, are always ready to greet you. Pine State Armory is a family-friendly store where safety meets expertise. Your kids are always welcome. And if you're new to the sport, we're here to help with gear recommendations and the knowledge and information you need to get started right. Looking to buy, sell, or trade firearms? Whether new or used, we have what you need. And to those who serve our country, we're proud to offer a military discount as a token of our appreciation. Visit us today at Pine State Armory, 338 Madison Avenue, Unit 8 in Skowhegan, and experience the great outdoors like never before.
Hey, Hal here. I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with Onx Hunt. I've been using it for a while now, and if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a very techie person, but the Onx app is it's a real time saver. I remember the days when we poured over topo maps everywhere we was going to go and stuff, and I don't do that quite as much anymore. Where it's really helped me is scouting, whether it's deer scouting, a moose, or even turkey hunting in the spring, which I do. It really helps out. I don't have to spend as much time running around the truck burning up the gas. I'm just basically using my Onx. Got it on my phone. Don't even carry a GPS anymore. So I just download the areas where I'm going to be hunting, whether it's up north moose hunting, and I use it mostly on the satellite imagery. I like to see the cuts and the clearings and the turkey hunting, the hidden fields and stuff. But everybody's using it now, from the game wardens to land surveyors, and just a great tool. And with our partnership with Onx, if you use a code BWB, you're going to receive 20% off on your first premium or elite memberships. And you just go to onxmaps.com/hunt. You'll be glad you did. Good luck on the trail.
Hey folks, Rick Labby here from Big Woods Bucks. I'm here today to tell you about our new packs. This is our new small pack, which the first time I saw it, Chris showed it to me, and I said, that's the Nuna, because that's the perfect pack if I'm getting on a buck track at noon. And it'll hold a sandwich, your water, a little bit of gear. It's virgin wool, made in USA, waterproof resistant, has a liner on the inside. It's a great pack. This pack, this is our newest large pack, which when I used to carry the older pack, I always wore suspenders because it bothered my hips a little bit. So we designed one with shoulder straps, and this is a great pack. It takes the weight off your hips, puts it onto your shoulders. It's got a GPS pouch right here in the top you slide in. Same deal, it's water resistant on the inside, got that liner. It's a perfect pack. So I go to bigwoodsbucks.com, get yours today, and I'll see you on the track.
As you all know, Big Woods Bucks is devoted to promoting the best equipment for tracking and still hunting the big woods. Part of that equation for success is the sights that sit on your hunting rifle. We've chosen Skinner Sights as the company to produce our custom-built BWB Tracker Series peep sight. It's constructed of solid steel, has our custom ghost ring, and was co-developed by some of the best trackers in the world. To get yours, go to bigwoodsbucks.com and click on the Optics tab.
So what do those older bucks usually weigh that you kill out there?
It varies. Usually if they're actually mature, they're over 200 pounds dressed.
Yeah.
We've gotten some really big ones. I got one that bottomed out a 300-pound scale. And I don't know what that one that shot 3 years ago, the one I was talking about by that came out of the willow brush, but that one was a very huge buck. We'd never weighed it. I'd never really been into it. I know that's a big thing out east, but we took poles and we tied that thing to poles, and 4 grown men couldn't carry that on their back. It took us like 8 hours to get that thing out of the swamp.
Big deer. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big deer. I figure it's probably mid 200s, probably 250, 260.
Yeah.
But that's a really big deer up here, regardless. Yep. Usually you shoot a mature buck, it's right around 200, 210.
Yep, about same as here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are you pretty much a lone wolf? You do a lot of this on your own, or do you have buddies and stuff that you hunt with in those areas?
I have a few friends that I hunt with, but I don't really hunt with them. We're buddies. We'll go out there. They got their spots. I got mine. I like hunting by myself. And literally, I do much better if I don't go with anybody. If I go alone, because I have a tendency to worry about, like, somebody's worried about me when I'm going to come out, or I'm worried about them, or
100%.
or you end up helping somebody, or
Yeah.
they're helping you, or whatever. If I go by myself, I'm concentrating on what I need to do. You know what I'm saying? So I do better by myself, and I know that. But the camaraderie is fun.
Yep. Yep. Fun for at the end of the day. Meet them back at the camp or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. So how many deer can you kill in Wisconsin? You get 2?
I can kill 1 buck with a bow and 1 buck with a gun.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
It's getting a little better here in Maine for that.
So you got a pretty good buck population then.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it sounds
They're trying constantly to knock it down, though. They've always been trying to lower our population. And I've noticed that when we have a high population, you have a lot of big bucks around. When you have a low population, you don't. So I like a high population.
Yeah.
But the DNR is constantly trying to bring that down. I mean, they keep making all these doe seasons and stuff, and just killing lots and lots of deer. So you never know where it's going to be, because they're pushing at it, and the hunters push back. But same guys that push back will go out and hunt during those doe seasons when they get them.
Right. What's the push? What's the push for? Is it from insurance companies, the farmers, or?
It was at first, and then we had a Governor Doyle was in office many years ago, and he was working for the insurance companies. And his thing was to get the deer down to about 5 per square mile, and the hunters wouldn't allow it. But then at the end of his term, they found CWD up here, and then they said they didn't have to listen to the hunters because it's a disease. And then they pushed. And when it first came up here, when he was in office, he at the time we had extremely good hunting at that time frame. And then he came in and he said that we had to kill all the deer in southern Wisconsin, not just lower the population, but every single deer.
I remember
from
that.
center of the state down.
Yeah.
And he was having them at first. He wanted them shooting them out of helicopters and all kinds of crap.
Oh, jeez.
He knocked the population down really bad. They gave unlimited tags, both buck and doe. And I know people that shot 30, 40 deer in a season. And you try to talk to them and it'd be like, well, they want us to. You know, I don't understand it. It's human greed. You don't have to do that just because they let you, you know.
How long ago was that, Dan?
What's that?
How long ago was that they did that?
I think that would have been around, I don't know, somewhere in the 2006 to 2010 range.
Have they come back since then pretty good?
They have, but they're starting to try more initiatives. They started putting more doe seasons in and stuff. They have a holiday hunt that's 10 days long, does only. They started giving away 4 or 5 tags, doe tags with your buck tag. And all that stuff is, lower in numbers.
So you must not have the wolves down in southern Wisconsin then to take care of some of the deer, huh?
I'm about 2 hours south of the wolves. You get to northern Wisconsin, and there's really some problems because the wolf numbers are up so high that a lot of guys that hunt very regularly that I talk to will tell me they go a season. They hunt at least every weekend and see 3 or 4 deer in a year.
Wow.
Sounds like Maine. Without the wolves.
We also got a very, very high bear population, and those bears eat a lot of the fawns.
Yeah, same thing here. Yeah,
yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't realize. We always hear about the coyotes and in your case wolves, but a lot of people don't realize how many fawns that the bears do actually eat. And I think it's kind of, obviously the bear hunting in Maine, I don't know what it's like in Wisconsin, but bear hunting's popular, but there's a lot of bears. It's
Right.
There's too many bears now up here. Really, they want to shoot more, and they can't get enough hunters to even shoot as many as they want to kill.
right.
Well, Wisconsin, in some of the best areas, they have the highest populations of bear. They make you wait 12, 13 years to get a tag.
wow.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
They just
Down where I live, you can get a tag almost every year, if not every year, because there's no bear down here, and they don't want them to get down here. But I can drive an hour and be in bear territory, or an hour and a half, and right on the fringe, they'll let you hunt almost every year. But just a couple hours north of that, where there's a real heavy bear population, you got to wait 12 years.
Here, they just passed the law last year. They haven't, the commissioner hasn't implemented it yet, but we're allowed 2 bear. Actually, it's been 2 bear. You could trap one and shoot one, but now you're going to be able to shoot 2 if the commissioner institutes the policy that they approved in the legislature. So, yeah, we got way too many bear, and there's just not enough hunters. You know, they always relied on a high percentage of non-residents coming to hunt for bear, because the main way they hunt them here is over bait anyways, and it's pretty. We say it's pretty effective, but a lot of people think it's 100%, especially the antis, but it's really only like 25% success on bear anyway. So, and they're trying to kill. They want to kill at least 4,000 a year, and they haven't. I don't think there's been more than 1 year they've done that.
Yeah,
they killed 1 year 2,500, 3,000. You know, they just ain't killing enough.
The trouble is, I think if they start killing two a piece, people will shoot the little one and then hold out for a better one, and
right.
You probably get a lopsided population, kind of like they did the deer here when they killed them all for CWD. You start seeing immature deer, right? Like one of the good things about the way they're doing things in Wisconsin, even though we have too many bears and they should probably kill a little more, we've got some of the biggest bears because, you know, it's so hard to get a tag.
Right.
So, I mean, people are shooting 500 pounders constantly, you know, 500-600 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but we do know they kill a lot of deer.
Yeah, they did. When I first started going to Saskatchewan with my dad back, I don't know, in the early 90s, you were allowed $2 back then. So that's just exactly what everybody was doing. They'd see 130, 140 inch buck walk in, and they instantly kill that deer, and they say, well, now I got one, so I'll just wait for a bigger one. Well, after 4 or 5 years, the older structure age, you know, went down because they were killing all the younger ones.
Yeah.
And so they stopped doing that.
That's exactly what's wrong with Michigan.
Yeah.
You know, in the state of Michigan, they get 2 tags like Wisconsin, but they can use both tags for gun or both bags for bow, or they can mix match them.
Yeah.
So a lot of those guys shoot the first deer they see, and then they hold out for a bigger one, and some of them even shoot the first 2 deer they see.
Yeah.
So, you know, then you don't get the age class out of the things, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're still at $1. Well, I mean, this special archery seasons in southern Maine. It doesn't matter for us, but they finally, a couple of years ago, they went to. Used to be if you drew a doe tag, you had to shoot the doe. If you shot a doe, you couldn't turn around and shoot a buck. You still just allowed 1 deer. So they just made it so now if you draw a doe tag, you can shoot a doe and then still shoot a buck. So we can get 2 deer, but not 2 bucks.
Yeah, still only one buck.
A lot of these younger guys don't realize. Like when I was a kid in Wisconsin, you couldn't get a doe tag. The only doe hunting was with a bow, and it was an either or. You got a tag, and if you shot a doe, you're done. You got to shoot 1 deer. And with a gun, they gave a party permit, and you had to have 13 people in your party to get 1 permit for a doe, and they didn't give it to everybody. You were real lucky to get one.
Wow.
And even like that, it took a long, long time to build a population up. When I was a kid, nobody hunted around here because all the deer were up north. They would all travel up north. And it took a long time to get that population up. And these people that want to knock that population down so bad and get it down to a low 5 per square mile or whatever, got to realize it's easy to knock it down that low. It's very hard to raise it back up.
Yep.
There must have been a lot of resistance from the big there's a lot of outfitters in the South with the big farms and everything. There must have been a lot of pushback from them.
There was a lot of pushback from western Wisconsin where the outfitters are, and like Buffalo County and stuff. And I think that when they started going after Buffalo County and stuff with the deer reduction, that's when we started to see the kickback be enough where we were starting to get a foothold. they did something where they called earn a buck, where you had to shoot a doe to get a buck. And then they would give you all the bucks you want, but you got to shoot doe for each buck you get. You earn tags. So that was working for them. They were knocking down a huge population. So then the outfitters really pushed back on that. And then we got a different governor in, and he was able to turn that around for us and make a law that they couldn't have the earn a buck.
How is Wisconsin overall? Like in Maine, we have a long hunting heritage. Hunting is something that even if someone doesn't hunt, someone in their family does or a friend, and it's very well accepted here as part of the lifestyle. Is it kind of like that in Wisconsin, or is it moving away from that?
Yeah, it is, but it's in pockets. I mean, the whole country is like that. I mean, you get outside and the farming communities and stuff, and everybody hunts. If they don't hunt, somebody in the family does. You ain't knocking on any doors to get permission because they got somebody in the family or their cousin or their brother or somebody hunts. But when you get into cities and stuff, well, we got a lot of liberals here, and we got a lot of people that hate hunting. We got a lot of anti-hunters that really are against it, don't understand it. They think that meat comes from a supermarket. Yeah, we have a lot of that. But when you get in the country, you don't.
It only came to mind just because you mentioned the change in governor, and that's what changes a lot of times. And
the big thing about changing of a governor here is in Wisconsin, our DNR is run by the governor. So when we buy tags, it doesn't even go back into hunting; it goes in the governor's pocket.
Oof.
So it's important that you have a governor that's on board with the DNR and isn't an animal rights activist kind of side of things.
Very important.
So when we get a conservative in office, we get a lot more, they're usually more friendly to the hunters, at least on that end of things. So that helps.
It's I think politically here, it's even the governors, whether they're liberal or conservative, they realize how important it is, not only as a way of life here, but for the economy. I mean, it's a big deal.
I think that helps because I think you've got more of a heritage of it overall. You're still more of a wilderness type state, where we're more populated, and that's when you start getting away from that stuff. Then it doesn't matter as much. You're correct on that. Yeah, I don't know how your DNR is set up though, too. I mean, ours is literally the head of the DNR is the governor. And it's really crazy because every time we change what side, whether it's Republican or conservative, as governor, the first thing they do is fire everybody on the DNR and then hire who they want. And it's just crazy because a lot of the people hired into the DNR are politicians. We had a Republican that went in, Scott Walker, and he kind of went in on stating that he was going to help the hunters out and fix the CWD thing that Doyle guy was doing. And when he came in, he did do a lot of that, and he did it really well. But he also did some things that really ticked off the teachers' unions and stuff, and they drove him back out and then got the other side in. And he had hired a biologist for every county. He hired more game wardens, and everything started getting better. And this new guy came in, and he hired his neighbor. His secretary got a job, and some campaign donors got jobs, and the biologists all got fired to pay for it. And it was just like, come on,
Huh.
Yeah, we're fortunate here. It doesn't work that way. The only the commissioner of ours is called Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, not DNR, but the commissioner is appointed by the governor, and that's it. Everybody else are employees, and they don't move with the change of regimes.
That's nice.
Yeah, just the commissioner. But usually the commissioners, I mean, we've had pretty much good ones as long as I can remember, as far as they support the outdoor community.
Yeah, and everybody under them has been there for a while, so we don't lose our experience.
Yeah,
huge.
Usually what happens is as the game wardens, their tenure increases, they move up the ranks. They have a rank structure, kind of like military. There's, they get sergeants and lieutenants and colonels, and once they move up, like into the major and colonel, they become part of the, hierarchy, if you want to call it, at the office. You know what I mean? So you've always got people that understand it there.
Yeah, I would really like to see kind of a voting structure where you voted for who is going to run your DNR, and have it completely separate from the politics.
Yeah, that works until
Yeah.
until it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword too,
Yeah.
I think.
But
Yeah, it could be. It could be in a state like mine where you got you're 50-50, with the animal rights guys and the hunters, right? It could work against me. You're right.
Yeah.
yeah, it's the you just want someone that goes with the numbers over emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
and some common
Right,
sense.
exactly. Yeah.
So-
Either one or the other, either the numbers or actual biological input, you know what I mean? That the science, either go by science or go by the numbers of what people want, one or the other, or a little of both.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously you've learned what some would say the hard way, just doing everything by trial and error and learning it, and you've already had some really good tidbits of advice, and every place is different, obviously, but I think probably most people hunt the way that you do as opposed to the way that we do, just because of circumstances, geography, and all that.
Even how much snow we have during gun season, it's not too often anymore.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's getting like that for us too.
Yeah.
But anyway, for guys that are, whether they're just getting started or been doing it for a while, what do you think is the most important advice you'd give someone out there?
My most important advice would probably be to not take everything for heart. I mean, a lot of these young guys now are all about literature for learning. I mean, they seek information, which is kind of what we're doing now. We're giving them information, right? But you got to take all that with a grain of salt, and realize that that a lot of people who are out there, obviously not you, Hal, or me, but there's a lot of people out there that have shot one or two deer that are out there because of the way the platforms are now. Everybody can have a podcast, or everybody can, share information. And I think you don't want to get too wrapped up into that. I mean, if something sounds good, try it and all that. But what they need to do is feet on the ground. You need to spend some time in the woods to get good at being in the woods. You need to be in the woods to learn how to read deer, and you got to actually practice. You can't just learn out of a book or a video or a podcast. You get good ideas. Got to spend a lot of time in the woods, walking around, looking at stuff, and not just walking. You see a lot of guys that just go out like shed antler hunting and stuff. They should be out there trying to learn things. Go out there with a goal to become a better hunter. You should learn how the deer travel in this. Why is this sign here? You don't see a rub and say, well, that's cool. You see a rub and you say, why is that there? What reason would a deer have to put that there? And you start to figure the woods out. But you need to spend time in the woods. You actually need to spend more time out walking and hunting than you do reading and listening to others telling you how to do it.
Good point. That's what I tell people. You can get on information overload nowadays, and when you're learning, you want to get the information. But I tell people you still have to sort through it all and put your own personality into it, because everybody's got different personalities. They hunt different ways. They think about things differently. People individually have to figure out themselves what works for them, because some people are more patient than others. Some people like to walk more than others. So you can't like pigeonhole everybody the same way. So if everybody just goes,
true,
take some information, get out there and learn it, and then make it your own style. That's the advice I tell people.
Good advice.
All right. Well, Dan, it's great having you on. Now, do you have a YouTube channel or anything?
Yeah, I've got a fairly large YouTube channel. It's the Hunting Beast YouTube channel. And I own Beast Gear, Hunting Beast Gear. I'm half owner. We make tree stands, climbing sticks, stuff for mobile hunters.
How come I don't know this stuff? Because I don't get online that much, I guess.
Yeah. We've got DVDs too that go in depth of the tactics I was talking about.
Oh, great.
So, I mean, all that can be found. I got a website with like a forum. They can find the DVDs and stuff there. But you just search Hunting Beast. The YouTube channel is pretty fun if people are into that.
I'm going to have to check it out in my spare time. All right. Okay, then. Check out Dan's stuff if you get on there and look around, see what's going on out in Wisconsin. Once again, great having you on, Dan. Thanks for being part of our podcast.
Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate you inviting me on. Big fan of yours, Hal. You're doing some great things in the East. Everybody knows your name.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
A little of both.
Yeah. As long as they don't try to be me, they'll be all right. It's tough being me. All right. Have a good day. What's left of it?
Dan.
Thanks.
All right. That was a great chat with Dan. Hope everybody picked up a few tidbits.
Yeah.
Interesting guy.
Yeah, that was good. So we're going to move along now to topic of the week or topic of the podcast, question, whatever you want to call it. But it's we're going to talk a little bit about finding a buck track, because that's where it starts, right?
It's all where it starts.
That's where it starts. You got to find a track.
Without a track, there's no hunt.
Yep. And everybody, well, not everybody, but different people have a different approach to it. So, and as I always tell people, don't try to do necessarily the same thing that someone else does or whatever. And everybody, sometimes people ask me, well, you do it this way, and Rick does it that way, and Joe does it that way, and it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
More than one way to skin a cat.
And so some years I don't do it the same way, or maybe next week I might do it different than I did the week before.
Yeah,
it depends on conditions and.
That's right. Snow conditions and all of that matters. You know, there's probably, if there's 8 inches of snow and a crust on top, you ain't gonna stomp around the woods looking for a track as much as you'd ride around. It's just
Right.
Yeah. All right, Rick, you're up first. Are you going to find your tracks?
Yeah. Well, I tend to put more miles on a pickup than probably anybody. I like to, of course, I've hunted this area my whole life, so I've pretty much been on a buck track and crossed every crossing, I think. And year after year after year, you cross these same spots, same tote roads, same valleys. So, and bucks are a habited creature. So, generation after generation, those bucks are still, whether they get clear cut and they grow back, they're still going to go back to those same crossings, those same corridors. And you see this year after year.
Yeah, those young bucks are learning that from the older bucks,
Exactly.
and the young bucks follow the old bucks. I think that's
Right.
how they find the signposts and all of the stuff.
Yeah. So I start out usually a couple hours before daylight, and I start searching hot spots of mine, I call them, that, and especially if you kind of keep logged in your memory. I keep a notebook actually, and sometimes in my Gazette, if you look, I've got about 5 or 6 Gazettes, because I got so many marks in them, I have to throw them away and buy a new one. But I'll mark down bucks from the year before that I know are left over that made it through. And that way I don't forget where they are, and I can kind of just go to that page where I'm hunting and say, oh, yeah, there was a big track over here. I think he weighed over 200, and there was one up here that I know was way over 200. And so I'll kind of go around and I'll hunt these little pockets where I think these big bucks are, where they're hanging out. And like I said, lots of times there's always, even if you do kill that big buck, another big buck's going to move in and take his spot because they're kind of territorial. So I like to put the miles on. And then one thing, this is one thing I do, and I was going to post a little video of it the other day, and I will after this. But one thing I do is when I find a buck track and he's headed up onto a mountain, let's say, which is, usually 90% of the time that's where they're going when they're going to go lay down or whatever. They're going to go uphill, unless they're chasing a doe. But if I can ride around that mountain,
You're right.
I'm definitely going to ride around that mountain and see if he come out, because, it might be 3 miles around that mountain by pickup, but it's, let's say, a mile straight over. Chances are, 50% of the time, you're going to find his track on that other road, and he's already gone through. So I don't want to get out of my truck, spend 2 hours to go a mile, because that's about my average speed on a buck track. 2.5 hours to go a mile, and then come out to the other road that I could have been on him, 15, 20 minutes later in my truck. And so I shorten that distance
Hang on.
up.
You're saying it's taking you 2.5 hours to go a mile?
No, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So I travel 2 miles an hour. So, yeah. But
I wasn't going to call him on that.
No, I just wanted to clear it up because I can see it now. Well, how do you walk 10 miles in a day then? So.
Right. Well, yeah, that's when we slow down.
Yeah.
When we slow down, we realize we might be getting close. But so anyway, I'll ride around and I'll check every possible road that I can to try to narrow that buck down. And what I do is I put my initials in the track once I find it. I'll walk in the track, probably 20, 30 feet in, and I'll walk the track out. And that kind of lets another hunter know if you're respectful, which I think 99% of us are respectful. If a guy's looked at a track and he's put his initials in it, as a tracker that guy's going around to look for that track again, and he's expecting to come back there. That's just a rule of the land, a rule of thumb of trackers. And so I'll put my initials in it, and I'll go around. If I don't cut that buck's track, making that loop around that mountain, that and you may not get all the way around. You might it kind of goes up into the fingers or whatever of the mountain peaks. He could have turned and gone left and gone way up around. So I'll come back and then I'll get on that track, which it might be hour and a half, 2, 3 hours later after I've checked everything else. And then I'll get on his track. And so that's kind of the way I do it. I put a lot of miles on my truck searching, and the other thing that does is I locate usually the first storm of the year, the first snowstorm, which unless I find a real huge buck, but I'll locate 2 or 3 real big bucks that I'll have logged in that I know living here or there. So if one doesn't pan out or I can't find this one, I go look for another one or whatnot. So, and the next week, if we get, and you're further into the rut and you got more hunting pressure, bucks don't seem to be crossing the roads, I might change it up. I might go down in by the river or down by a swamp where I know there's a crossing, and sometimes hike in a half a mile and just kind of make a swing where I know there's always bucks crossing, and which is more what you do. You're in the woods right after daylight and on foot looking for a track, I think, right?
Yeah. Once in a while, I will, if there's a particular place, especially if I know there's going to be nobody else there, right, I'll run, I might run a spot on the way to get where I'm going anyway. But when I leave in the morning, sometimes I don't know where I'm going till I pull out the driveway. I go left or right, and that determines, partly where I'm going. But then I might check a side road going in. Just depends on the day. But usually I go to where I'm going to hunt, and usually it's quite a ways, it's quite a drive anyways to where I go sometimes. So
right,
I might put 20 miles on to get to where I'm going. Well, that's a lot of checking too.
Yeah.
And I have got lucky. So I've shot quite a few bucks that I did pick up from the road.
Driving into where you're going.
Driving
right
into where I'm going,
right
right out of the blue. And some of them were I've been driving and I drove into some snow I didn't even know was there. You know, I was just heading to go hunt, and I run into some snow. I've killed a bunch of bucks that way.
Yeah.
Well, Brutus, was out of the truck, right?
Yeah.
Found his track.
On a main road.
Yeah. That was muzzleloader season when there's not hardly any hunters, and I had already took that other track from the road, and when I got on it, I knew it was one of them. I call them either ors.
Yeah.
And he run down into the deer yard, and he went through a couple of narrow trees, and I said no. Even though it's late, I don't care.
You knew he didn't have any horns.
Yeah, I didn't know he
Right.
had much, and
Right.
probably that time of year, once you get to muzzleloader season, if the track looks like about a 200-pounder, you're probably 170 or 80, you know?
Yeah.
So I said, Will was filming there, and I said, no, we're going back out. So we lumped it back out to the truck, and just happened I headed another place in my mind to go into the woods, and I cut that track, Brutus's track, right on the main logging road, and it wasn't an hour old. If I hadn't taken the first track,
You wouldn't have seen
I'd
it.
have gone right by there before
Right.
he crossed.
Yeah.
And that's the luck of it sometimes.
Right.
And you do the same thing in the woods. Sometimes you'll get in the woods and you'll strike right onto a fresh track, or you might walk all day and you might not. But that's part of the hunt anyway. I always just figured in the same way, it's not that much different than what you're trying to accomplish, because like I'll walk through the woods, and on any given day I might cross 10 buck tracks, but I'm logging those away in my head, where
Right.
they're crossing, what size they are, and I'm just looking for a certain sized one, and that's it. But
Yeah.
I'm always keeping track of the stuff in the woods, you know.
Yeah. So another thing, you and I, people ask me, they go, well, have you ever shot or seen a big buck and shot one just out of the truck? And I have never shot a big buck right near my truck ever, because I'm never looking out in the choppings. I'm never looking in the woods as I'm driving.
Right.
I'm driving along, and I'm constantly, my eyes are on the shoulder of the road, left or right, wherever the sun's right and I can see, looking for that track. I don't care what time of day it is. Even if I've killed a deer, I'm still driving out and I'm looking for a buck track for the guy that's with me, or dad, or somebody.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking at a track. And it's kind of funny. I told you the story a long time ago, but Glenn Feeney, when Glenn used to be the game warden back then, I don't know, what was that, 25, 30 years ago now, and I was out around cat hut, and he stops me one day. He goes, I want to check your rifle. So I show him my rifle. Okay. Didn't check my license. He stops me again the next day. Let me check that rifle. And I told him, I said, Glenn, I says, you'll never catch me with a gun loaded in my truck ever. I don't hunt for my truck. And I said, I'm always looking for a track. And I said, I never load my gun till I get out of the truck. And he never checked my gun again after that. So
yeah,
but
it's
being a tracker, it's just different.
for me. I think it's all the above, because I've learned a lot from you guys. I mean, you guys have been tracking a lot longer than I have, and you both have your different ways. And to me, it's all different situations. If I'm guiding, I'm driving a lot less, just because, number one, you want to. Someone doesn't want to ride around in a truck for 3 hours.
Exactly
in the morning,
right.
So I'm usually picking a spot that I like, or going up on a mountain and walking. But there are a lot of times, if I'm hunting alone especially, and it's early in the morning, like you said, there's no breakfast or anything. It's out and gone, and try to be the first one out.
Yep.
Wait a minute now. Rick's got to have his Fruit Loops in the morning. I heard he has Fruit Loops every morning.
I usually do eat. I usually do eat cereal or oatmeal every morning before I track.
I don't know how far Fruit. I'd have about 2 farts and a bowl of Fruit Loops would be gone.
Yeah.
But it's a lot depends on who you're hunting with or where you're hunting. If there's enough snow to where the truck's hard to get around, I'm getting my sled and going. because you can
Right.
cover so much ground on a sled.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way because nobody will be there either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can go on roads that no one else can go on. You can. I love when the
Yeah.
conditions are right to use
And
my
the,
sled.
and the later in the season too, your volume of hunters has dropped dramatically. I think 75% of the hunters have dropped off by the end of the season on muzzleloader.
Yeah.
And the deer at the same time, especially if you've got 6 inches or more of snow, they're already thinking about going to where they're going to migrate to. So you got bucks that are coming in that you've never seen before, and that's when I usually don't hunt with the truck. I get into those pieces of woods where I know those bucks are concentrated with those does, like you and I did that last week. And
Now, I will say I made a mistake one day, and it wasn't a track size mistake, but I found a track, and I mean right off first thing in the morning, and I walked it out and looked at it. I didn't leave my initials on it. I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't. I've been up here for 40 years, and I never knew about that, and I've never seen initials in a track either.
that's because you don't hunt down where I do.
So
And that's why.
I know so I started putting my initials because 30 years ago when the Benoits were hunting in
Yeah.
by me, I'd come up to a buck track and it'd have LB. Well, it was either Lanny, Lane, or Larry. One of those three usually, or Shane. I never saw Shane's initials in a track, but it was usually Lanny or Lane. And so that's when I started putting my initials in the tracks, and I still do it to this day. And I was over to New Hampshire, and there was guys checking tracks everywhere. I mean, everywhere. I was meeting guys left and right, and I said, man, if a buck crosses the road here within 5 minutes, a guy's going to see his track. So
I'm never going to go by a track without putting HB on it ever again. That's going to be my new signature. I'm going to put Hal's initials everywhere I go.
Yeah.
But so I see this track in the morning. I look at it. It wasn't a real big track. It was early in the day, so I left it. Well, later in the day, Rick happens to call me, and geez, Joe, where you at? I said, oh, I'm down. I said, I still haven't really found a good track. Oh, I found a pretty good one right here. I think I'm going to take. And I said, oh yeah, where you at? He tells me where he's at. I said, yeah, I looked at that track this morning. He walked in there. That deer didn't move all day. He walked in there. I think it ended up being 150 or 160, not a big body, but had a big 10-point rack on it. And Rick killed it right there.
which one was it? When was that?
That was 2 years. The big 10-pointer, that nice 10-pointer that you shot that didn't weigh up. Yeah.
That's
beautiful
right.
rack.
You did find that track in the
Yeah, and I left it.
I forgot
because
about
it wasn't,
that.
it was, but for whatever reason, you saw something you liked about it and you took it, and it was a nice rack on it. It wasn't a real heavy deer, but it was a great buck.
Yeah. I think he was like 178. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was, it would have been good for me.
Good horn, so
I would have been happy with it, but
Yeah.
So you just, I guess the point of that is don't get so fussy over your track, and Rick
Right.
obviously saw something he liked more than I did, but
for instance, and we were talking about this not too long ago, track size usually has nothing to do with weight most of the time. Not all the time, but sometimes it can fool you because that buck my buddy Sandy killed back 4 years ago now. We went in that morning and we saw this buck track where he'd crossed the road, and we both had looked at it and said, yeah, he's probably 180. That's what we guessed. Yeah, he's about 180. We looked at this track. Had kind of a narrow, pointy track. Wasn't rounded off like he was an old deer. Wasn't really dragging his feet. And we rode around almost half the day in there and never found another big buck. So we said, well, we'll go back and take that track. That one, I guess, we'll see what he looks like. Better than riding in the truck. So I got on the track. Sandy kind of flanked me down in there by the swamp. And after I got on that track for about 30 minutes, he was chasing the doe. And every time the doe would go through something, he'd go out around it. So I said, he's got some pretty good horns. And then, following him, I could see his stance was like 8-9 inches wide. And that's what I look for, is that stance, because that tells you how old the deer is, because the older they get, the more their chest spreads every year. So the width is probably the most important thing. I mean, track size has got a lot to do with it and being worn or tied on the front, but I think
a lot of people think the stride's everything, but it isn't, because they can walk. Same buck can walk a different stride. You don't know really what it is.
It changes all the time.
Depends on
Are
what,
they tired? Are they moving fast? Are they moving slow? Or are they,
Depends on what mood he's in,
I like the toe draggers.
Yeah, me too. They're tired.
They're tired of this. So I've seen them dragging their feet the first week, and them's the older
ones. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a good discussion.
But it is still enjoyable sometimes to get a cup of coffee and ride around looking for a track. Some days if you're tired or whatever, that's the other part of it too, is you're saving your energy. That's a big part of it for me, is if you're driving around finding the track, you're not, because you can wear yourself out looking for a track too.
Right.
I used to do that more, like when I guided all 4 weeks. By muzzleloader season, I was worn down, and I would do that more during muzzleloader season.
Yeah.
I'd either do it with my snowmobile, if there was plenty of snow, or I'd go in my truck. And a lot of times I'd just to cover ground, I would head north. I'd go right up into zone 4 and stuff, and just take a ride. And there ain't a lot of deer or tracks, but usually I always found a good one doing that eventually.
Yeah.
I remember it might not be till 10, 11 o'clock, but I'd find one, and then at least I was fresh when I got on it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, if they see an initial in the track, it's might be mine or Hal's. Now.
Yeah.
We're probably looking around, driving around the mountain, but especially if there's a skeleton and crossbones in it. Don't come back. Yeah.
We'd like to welcome our newest sponsor. It's Pine State Armory in Skowhegan, Maine. Great place to do business. They got all kinds of guns and stuff, and Joe's been buying some guns there since they opened about a year or so ago, and knows them pretty good.
Real good people over there. Nick and his wife Jess, like Hal said, opened about a year ago, and I had met Nick over at another store that he was at before that, and just really good customer service, great dealing with, and they have a surprising amount of Remington pumps in there.
Hey, don't tell everybody that.
Isn't that our job?
Yeah.
Anyway, just good folks to deal with. I know that Rick goes over there a lot, and Shanzy has been too. So
yeah, Shanzy told me just come out of there.
It's
yesterday. So
nice having a local gun store that supports us, so we can help support them hopefully, and send people their way. I know they do a lot of transfers. If that's all you're doing, or if you're looking for something special, Nick and Jess are usually pretty good at finding it. So
check them out. Pine State Armory.
Yeah, I think their web address is pinestatearmory.org. I'm pretty sure when I looked it up there. But anyway, I'm sure you'll be hearing more about them coming up, and
they'll have an ad.
They're going to be doing. I know Nick and I have talked about. They did a big cookout last year and had a packed house on a rainy day, so that was nice to see. But we're gonna do something else coming up probably this summer, cookout, and get everyone together. It's always a good time.
Sounds good. I'll try to make it.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're a 4-season lodge located just south of Jackman. got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open all obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlinlodge.com.
Hi everyone, team member Mark Sheeran here. Are you or someone you know struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, but you don't want to go to rehab or 12-step meetings? Well, that's exactly why we created our non-12-step Freedom Model Coaching Program. In our program, you can be coached by me and Michelle Dunbar through our in-house 2-day addiction solution workshop, or if you want to stay home, you can be coached through video conferencing on Zoom. Both options are powerful and proven effective. We've personally coached more than 27,000 people over the last 34 years. With the Freedom Model, you won't have any record of being treated for an addiction either. This is a huge benefit for those with professional licenses, or who are high profile, or simply who have a lot to lose with such a damaging label. If you're ready to change your life and solve your addiction for good, call me directly at 888-424-2626 and set up your free 30-minute coaching session today. I look forward to helping you. And here's that number again, 888-424-2626. Take care.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.